The Gold Glove nominations are out. 3 Brewers are up. And could there be another third baseman in the trade market the Brewers could have their eyes on? We'll get to that coming up next here on Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Oh, yeah. The nominations are out for the Gold Gloves. And this is where we always get disappointed because the Brewers always seem to get screwed when these things, when the awards are finally given out. The Brewers have only had 2 Gold Glovers since 1982. How you doing, everybody? Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Longtime sportscaster here in the state of Wisconsin, proud host of Locked On Brewers. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, $20 off your first purchase at Gametime. So, yeah, this is the time of the year where those Gold Glove nominations always come out. And then shortly after, like in early November, is when we always get disappointed because our guy never wins. The Brewers, as I mentioned, 2 Gold Gloves. They've only won 2 Gold Gloves since 1982. Has the defense been that bad with the Brewers? Certainly not. Certainly not. Gomez in 2014 won the award. In 2013, I should say, he won the award. And Lorenzo Cain in 2019. I mean, Lorenzo Cain should have won it like 15 times. The guy was so good in defensively in center field. Gomez won it in 2013. Other than that, there's been players who've been up and have not won. I believe Jim, like Jim Gantner, the best defensive second baseman, not named Brice Turang, in Brewer history. I don't think he ever won a Gold Glove. I mean, Jim Gantner was great as second baseman. He wasn't the best of the plate. He was serviceable. How did he not ever win a Gold Glove? But the Brewers do have Brice Turang up for a Gold Glove. Number 1, defensive runs scored. Number 1 in the league in that. I believe it's number 1 in baseball as well. Here's who he's up against. Ketel Marte, Bryson Scott, and himself. 3 guys. There's 3 nominations. And we're going to go through all the other 2 Brewers here in a second. But the guy who should win the award, hands down, is Brice Turang. I mean, the analytics, the stats all point there. And of course, you know, me, I always go by the eye test. Now, this award is voted by each manager in baseball and 6 coaching members of each staff. You know, some staffs have more than 6 coaches, but 6 coaches can vote for this. So this isn't going to the writers. This is going to the managers and coaches themselves. And of course, some of these guys are going to have some bias. And somehow offensively, offensive numbers always gets stuck into this. Not, no one comes out and says, well, you know, this guy wins it because he had a great offensive year. You know, Ketel Marte was the best offensive player of all 3 of these guys, Bryson Scott, Marte, and Turang, who are nominated. And, you know, it seems like that always gets factored in. It shouldn't, because this is a Gold Glove. We're talking strictly Gold Glove. I don't care if the guy hit 091, but if he was brilliant defensively and the analytics all had him, you know, maybe the best at his position, he should win the Gold Glove. Offense should play no part of it. Not that Turang was horrible offensively, but let's face it, Marte is a better offensive player. But Turang, the eye test and what he does out there defensively, you know, we see him every day. These managers and coaches should know. Obviously, they see him. They know about him. They hear from their scouts and all that. They know. These guys all know who the best at the best of the best are at each position. So Brice Turang, there should never be any screw jobs in this. But I feel like of all the postseason awards, the Gold Glove over the year has been the biggest screw job. And if Brice Turang doesn't win a Gold Glove, I don't know. But I mean, a lot of it's reputation. But how, you know, Turang, what does he got to do? Makes every play at second base. You can count on one hand and have a few fingers left over on the amount of mistakes he's made at second base. But Brice Turang, and all the great plays he's made, Brice Turang, to me, Gold Glove, hands down. Don't include offense in it. Don't be a little biased. You know, for some reason, there's always that biasness towards the Milwaukee Brewers. But Brice Turang should win the Gold Glove. We'll see when it's announced in early November. Also up for the award, Blake Perkins. He's up against Jacob Young of the Nats and Brenton Doyle of Colorado. Now, the only thing that's working against Perkins here is he's not the everyday center fielder, but he's up for the award. We know about the 5 home runs that he's robbed this year, those brilliant plays, and just gets to every ball with his speed and all that. He's great. I don't think Perkins is going to win Gold Glove. Not that he did not play Gold Glove defense in center field, but he didn't play every day. Not the everyday center fielder. So, not the everyday center fielder. Didn't even start in the playoffs. So he's not the everyday center fielder. He was there a lot of times because of injuries. He's a nice fourth outfielder, but to be considered for the Gold Glove, even though you're not an everyday player, that is pretty cool. But he's not going to win it, right? But who knows? I mean, the way goofy things happen. But again, the Brewers 2 Gold Gloves since 1982. I don't have a lot of faith that Perkins is going to win the Gold Glove. Right field, Jake McCarthy, Mike Yastrzemski, Sal Frelick. Sal Frelick, again, another guy. Look at all the great plays he made out in right field. Didn't play any third base like we thought he was going to do. Played all in right field and did the job. But again, subjectively, is he going to win it over Yaz or McCarthy? Yaz is just like his uncle, Carl Yastrzemski. Carl Yastrzemski was a great outfielder, all-around Hall of Fame type player anyway. But Yaz, his uncle, Carl Yastrzemski, with the player of the Boston Red Sox, great defensive outfielder. Great. And Mike is kind of the same way. Kind of reminds me of his dad out there. But we'll see. I'm sure McCarthy or Yaz will win the award over Sal Frelick. But it would be just an atrocity, again, if Brice Turang does not win Gold Glove at second base. I mean, how can you not give it to Yaz? Or not give it to Turang? Yaz, I think, is going to win it in right field. And center field, who knows? It's probably not going to be Blake Perkins. But to be one of the 3 guys mentioned when you're not an everyday center fielder, that says a lot. And the Brewers defense, and I saw numbers in J.R. Radcliffe's column that show that, Jackson Chourio was among the top 10 defensively in the analytics in defense. Not up for an award, but Chourio probably could be considered for something like this. Probably down the road, maybe. But 3 players nominated for the Milwaukee Brewers: Blake Perkins, Sal Frelick. Brice Turang should win it. Again, these postseason awards, I don't really care at the end of the day because I want championships now. These are nice little awards, but it'd be great to see Turang rewarded for himself, to get rewarded. Just a little something he can use against us in arbitration down in years to come. All right. The Brewers spending in the last 2 years, it has gone down. Is it going to go down again this year? And a potential trade partner out there for Devin Williams that's being floated out there. And who the Brewers could get in return on that. Could solve their third base spot. We'll talk about that coming up next here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Always great having you along here on Locked On Brewers here in the off-season. Yeah, every time I sit down and do these off-season shows, I'm thinking, man, I wish we had a playoff game to talk about. I planned for us to do shows deep into October every year. I have these expectations that we're going to be doing it, and here we are again, mid-October, and we're talking about off-season and what some of the moves the Brewers can make or will possibly make. And this is how we're going to be all off season. We're going to be the hot stove league and rumors and things the Brewers should do and how they should shore up things and all that. That's what we're here for here on Locked On Brewers. And I appreciate everybody who's coming along here on Locked On Brewers so far here in the off season. The listenership, the viewership has been just fantastic. You get us on Google, Spotify, Apple, wherever you download your podcast. The audio podcast, we are still there 5 days a week talking Brewers baseball with you. And, of course, our growing YouTube page. Hey, even if you download us on the audio, please go to YouTube, search Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. That alerts you every time we drop an episode here on Locked On Brewers. But maybe you are looking for tickets for a concert. Maybe comedy. A lot of good comedy shows always coming to the Milwaukee and in Madison as well. Go to Gametime. Gametime, that's my favorite app. Gametime, they have the flash deals. You can save. You just pick a section that you want to go to, and they pick out a good seat for you, and you get a save. You save very much so on whether it's a game or an event, right on those flash deals, zone deals, all-in pricing. You got to toggle this feature where you get the whole total up front. It's not like where you go each and every step and they keep adding prices to your ticket. So you bought a ticket for $30 and all of a sudden you're paying $75. That's not how it works. You get all the prices up front. You get the seat views, the panoramic view from the seat. Hey, you want a seat, let's say near mid-court for a Bucks game. Push the seat, push the where you want to sit, and it pops up. Hey, this is the view of the seat, and it's pretty accurate as well. You always get the lowest price guaranteed with Gametime, or they'll credit you 110% of the discount. So download the Gametime app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, and you're going to get $20 off your purchase, your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, download the app, Gametime app, spell out Locked On MLB, type it in, Locked On MLB for $20 off your purchase. Download the Gametime app. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed, $20 off your first purchase with Gametime. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. All you everydayers out there. And of course, follow me on Twitter as well. Chuck Freeman on Twitter at Chuck Freeman, FREIMUND. Got some people spelling my name wrong, which is nothing new. My name gets spelled all sorts of different ways, but it's FREIMUND. There's not a lot of spellings out there like that. In fact, outside of my family, I've never met anybody with the spelling of my last name, Freeman. So are the Brewers going to be spending some money here in the offseason, or are they not? The projection is that they'll have maybe $20 to $30 million to spend out there. Mark Attanasio has not really said. As I said earlier, the salary has gone down over the last couple of years. I don't picture it going up either. I don't picture it going up under Mark Attanasio. But, are they going to spend money on a free agent? Are they going to spend money on, a couple of guys making $10 million a year? But they do have a little bit of money to spend. Not a lot, $30 million. And it's a shame that they can't spend more. But I've said before, the way I'd like them to go is give that $30 million to Alex Bregman. Now, could another third baseman be in play for the Milwaukee Brewers? Devin Williams, there's a report out there from Bleacher Report that the Philadelphia Phillies are interested in our closer. Now, I have no problem trading him to the Phillies. Some organizations don't like to trade their players to teams in their division or maybe other contenders. And the Brewers are a contender, and they do compete with the Phillies to get to the World Series. They didn't meet up with the Phillies this year, obviously, because the Phillies once again failed to get to the World Series and failed to win a world championship. They got bumped out by the Mets. So we have something in common with the Phillies. We both got bumped out early, but the Phillies really had high expectations. And the feeling is they need to go out and get themselves a closer. Devin Williams could be that guy. Sounds like, according to a report from Bleacher Report, they are eyeing up Devin Williams. So could this be the way the Brewers go and get their third baseman? And I have no problem trading Devin Williams whatsoever. The Brewers have so many options. Trevor McGill. I thought maybe in the offseason last year, Uribe, but he's just not ready. He's coming off the knee surgery as well. Uribe's got to work. He's got to prove to me he can get his pitches under control, throw strikes, not walk guys before I trust him in the closer spot. He's got closer stuff. He throws 100, but Uribe's got some work to do to earn my trust on becoming a high leverage guy to begin with again. And we'll see. He should be 100%. But I would think if they trade Devin Williams, that McGill right now is waiting in the wings, who obviously, throws 100. Plenty of options, I feel there they can go to. Mizorowski, I believe, is going to be on this roster as a setup guy right now. And but I think if they trade Devin Williams going into the season next year, and of course, you have to find out what's going to happen with the trade market, that if they trade Williams McGill would be the closer. Now, Pat Murphy, out of his press conference last week, when he was asked about the shortstop position, he was asked, are you moving Turang over there? Are you moving Ortiz? Well, the first thing he said is, well, I think we have to wait till the trade market shakes out. We might be, if we acquire somebody, I think we have to wait on that. Obviously, the Brewers are looking to acquire somebody in the infield. You have to wait. He let that out there. So I have a feeling they are going to make a move in the infield. Maybe they make a move for a shortstop and Ortiz stays at third base. Or Devin Williams. You could start making trades once the World Series is over. But Devin Williams, could he go to the Philadelphia Phillies? And the Phillies are really disenchanted with Alec Bohm, their third baseman. I'd say Phillies fans are disenchanted. Each of the last few years, Bohm has failed the Phillies in the second part of the season. And then my first question would be, boy, why do we want to pick up a third baseman who fails for the Phillies when you need him most? He was an all-star, but he had a terrible second half. At one stretch, he went 8 for 47 in the month of September. You have him under 2 years control. And of course, when you're a small market like the Milwaukee Brewers, you always got to look at, how many years of control? And I really hate that. I hate that's the way the baseball's structured. You always got to look at how many years of control. He's making about $4 million right now. But that's the way you got to look at it, because this is unfortunately the way baseball's set up, that you always got to look at, when you're the Milwaukee Brewers, how many years control do you have of this guy? You'd have 2 years of control. He batted .280, 15 home runs. He's an all-star type third baseman, but he slumped off in the second half of the season. Did have a hand injury. Cost him miss about a month, I believe, worth of games. He's 28 years old. He was even benched in the playoffs. I believe game 2 against the Mets, he was benched. But I would think he would be a trade candidate for the Phillies, and the Brewers need a third baseman. If you're going to trade Devin Williams, I like Alec Bohm in April and May and June. So again, it seems like in September and August when you need him most, and in the postseason. He's been miserable in the postseason. He's been miserable. If you listen to WIP, the big Philadelphia all sports station, fans are coming all over. They're all over Alec Bohm, just destroying him on the radio. So I don't know if that's the guy we want to pick up. I still like the Bergman option, but Bohm might be an option the Brewers might be thinking of if they're going to trade Devin Williams. Again, I have no problems trading him to the Phillies. They're going to pick up the Brewers, obviously, the $10 million. He's in the final year of arbitration. They'll give him the $10 million. They won't decline that at all. They'd be complete idiots if they did. And then they would trade him. Got to pick up that option first, obviously, and then trade him. But I wonder what kind of package deal. But I think if they did trade him to the Phillies, Bohm would be a guy they would be after. And maybe that's the case. And then they spend that $30 million elsewhere. Interesting decisions the Brewers have to make. I saw, Colin Ray is one of them that we talked about. He's got a $5.5 million option. I was reading Adam McCalvy's piece, and he said it might be debatable whether they pick up, at least that's how I read it, Colin Ray's option on $5.5 million. I would think that's a no-brainer. Picking up a starting pitcher who's been that productive for you, $5.5 million. I don't think that's, even though the Brewers have so many options for starting pitching next year. I mean, this is something we're going to get into in the offseason, but they have so many different ways they can go with starting pitching when you throw Ashby and DL Hall into the mix. And Peralta, your number one starter, is going to make $8 million next year. How many contenders can say that their number one starter is making $8 million? I mean, the Brewers do so much with so little, don't they? I mean, their number one starter. And of course, Brandon Woodruff, he's the X factor in all this. How's he going to fit in? And, things look good at the end of the season when he's throwing in the bullpen and all that and taking those sessions. we'll see how he's got the whole offseason to get ready for spring training and how he looks once camp opens in February. That's going to be right around the corner. I mean, offseason comes in such a quick time. It does. Before you know it, it'll be February. And like in the middle of the night, or late at night, the Brewers will make a trade in the dead of winter, like they did, when they picked up Rhys Hoskins. It was like a random Tuesday night in the middle of winter. Went out to eat, came home. Oh, Rhys Hoskins, better cut a podcast, updated podcast. And we did a Rhys Hoskins show for 30 minutes. And it was great. And I expected big things from him. And I still do. He's going to be back next year, I think. That's another decision. Plenty of decisions to be made. But I think one of the things will the Brewers do, number one, will they trade Devin Williams? I think they absolutely will. Absolutely will. Now, will he go to the Phillies? That's another question mark. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. The Brewers broadcasting crew. We don't talk much about the broadcasters here, but we'll talk about something coming up here in just a bit. We'll come right back after this timeout here on Locked On Brewers. Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. FanDuel is America's number one sportsbook for a reason. It is so accessible, easy to use, and live betting. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, and you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, so much more on the same page where you actually place your bets right there on FanDuel. America's number one sportsbook, accessible, great payouts, all that. And right now, you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Maybe you want to place a bet on the Vancouver Canucks. $5, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets added into your account. And with college basketball and college football going on every day now, but basketball coming up, NBA shortly, and the NHL underway, there's not a shortage, and of course, of the baseball playoffs to get in with all the action on FanDuel. FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com. But you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. You place that first $5 bet. FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. The Brewers have always been blessed with great announcers, radio and TV. You know why? Because these guys always move on to bigger jobs, just like the players. Our players always leave for bigger markets. It seems like our play-by-play guys always leave for bigger things as well. All the way back to when it was Bob Uecker and Merle Harmon. Harmon was leaving the Brewers to broadcast the Olympics for NBC. But you look at him. Dwayne Mosley, I thought, was excellent, who called the final out of the 1982 playoffs when Uecker was on TV. Jim Powell. Pat Hughes was always one of my favorites. Joe Block. Corey Provis, who moved on to the Twins. So many guys they've had. And the current group. Levering. Lane Grindle. Josh Mauer, who sneaks in there. I think they have a terrific crew. And I say this because Brian Anderson signed a multi-year deal with TNT. And Brian does limited games on TV. And you always wonder, how much longer is he going to stay? Because he's got a big workload. The guy's calling NBA games, he's calling college basketball. He's one of the big game announcers, I think, out there right now. When I say big game announcers, this guy could be doing Super Bowls, Final Fours, you name it. Multi-year deal. And when he's not there, Jeff Levering obviously moves the TV, and he's really, really good as well. And, of course, you see Levering doing network stuff as well. When your guy is doing network stuff, that says a lot about your broadcasters. The one thing the Brewers have been a good constant in, hiring great broadcasters. And the guys here end up doing even bigger things down the road. So we'll see. Brian Anderson, multi-year deal with TNT, but he's got a great deal with the Brewers where he does do limited games. Always love seeing and hearing BA do games. I just wonder if someday, if he's eventually going to just say, well, I got too much network stuff on my hands. He does live in the Milwaukee area year round. We'll see. But I mean, from the broadcasters, the play-by-play guys, all the way down to the analysts, Schroeder, Vinny Rottino, Tim Dillard. Think all those guys, announcers and analysts, just do an amazing job. Love having them on. Love seeing them. Love looking forward to the broadcast and hearing the broadcast, whether you're in the car or watching them on TV. But just interesting that Brian Anderson signs a multi-year deal with TNT, and that has not been surprising as well. When is it? Oh, when are we gonna, he did games for Fox a few years ago, NFL games. I'm surprised that he's not doing Sunday afternoon NFL football. Brian Anderson is that good. And that's going to do it for the show for today. My name is Chuck Freeman. Thank you, all you everydayers, for making us your first listen on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. For your second listen, for all the postseason coverage and everything Hot Stove League related, my guy Sully at Locked On MLB has got it all covered. Remember, our podcast, you get them on Google, Spotify, Apple, wherever you download your podcast. There's so many podcast platforms out there. We're on all of them because we're the number one Brewer podcast on the internet because of you great Brewers fans out there. Please, we're going to start doing a mailbox, by the way, a mailbox Mondays. I think we're going to start doing beginning next week. And we'll ask for questions on Twitter and on here as well. Not now. We're going to do that next week, but I'll probably put out something, I'll float a little balloon out there on Sunday night to get some questions from you guys on things you want answered with the Milwaukee Brewers. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube. Search Locked On Brewers. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell. That'll alert you every time we drop an episode here on Locked On Brewers. Great talking to you, everybody. As always, we're a Brewer brotherhood right here and sisterhood here on Locked On Brewers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. This is Chuck Freeman. Have yourself a great night, everybody.